Escalating power games in Ukraine have had plenty of interested observers offering support from the sidelines, with the West and Russia being increasingly pulled in opposite sides. One of the loudest political voices weighing in has been that of the US Republican Senator and former presidential candidate John McCain.
The destiny you seek lies in Europe.
That was in December, when the former presidential hopeful became one of the godfathers of the revolution, taking time out from domestic affairs to travel to Kiev's Independence Square, where he rallied the anti-government crowds. Well, a little earlier, I spoke to John McCain and I asked him for his reaction to the latest reports of Russian troop movements within Crimea.
Vladimir Putin views Crimea especially as part of Russia. He views Ukraine that way as well, but especially valuable and important to him and his ambitions is the base at Sevastopol, and they are taking the actions that are predictable, particularly since he views the United States as weak. He sees our failures in Syria, Iraq, Russian occupation of Georgia, and the list goes on, and I think he is emboldened by that, and he is going to take steps to try to ensure that Ukraine, particularly Crimea and probably eastern Ukraine, will remain part of Russia.
Well, I mean, you were in Kiev in December, and you made no secret of your very strong support for the European end of the country. But there is a difficulty in Crimea, isn't there? I mean, could it come to a point at which you actually have to consult the essentially Russian population down there and ask them whether they want to stay in Ukraine or go to Russia?
Crimea officially is part of Ukraine, and that is what is international boundaries. So if you start going around asking people if they want to be part of a country or not, depending on their views, that could obviously have serious consequences. Crimea is part of Ukraine, and Vladimir Putin is going to take steps to prevent the loss of Russian sovereignty over Crimea and, I believe, eastern Ukraine, and he'll do what's necessary to achieve that, and that is a violation of every international standard that I know of.
So what do you want the United States and the West, in a wider sense, to do about it?
First, condemn it. Second of all, look at various options, including, if absolutely necessary, economic sanctions, a larger Magnitsky Act, which is sanctions on individuals who may be responsible, because there will be violence there in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. There's a significant part of the population of Crimea that doesn't want to be part of Russia. And so there needs to be various actions taken, including, by the way, stepping up things like bringing Georgia into NATO and Moldova into the EU.
But what the Russians can be absolutely certain of is that the Americans are not going to do anything physically in terms of intervention into this crisis. Is that correct?
I think militarily he can be assured of that, but there are many measures. Again, economic sanctions, individual sanctions, universal condemnation, speaking out as Ronald Reagan did, bring down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev, speaking up for these people.
The difficulty is, and you know this very well, is that the economy of the Ukraine is literally days from complete meltdown. Why isn't the United States coming up with any money? Why isn't the United States getting together with other members of the Western Alliance to bring money into the equation?
We are working on at least $1 billion package right away. I hope that we could get that done next week. You are exactly right. There is urgency. There's absolute urgency to getting economic assistance short-term and then a long-term IMF agreement in order to rescue the Ukrainian economy, which is literally on the brink of collapse.
And in terms of the crisis in Crimea itself, how much time do you think that anybody outside the country has to make their point?
I think in the short term you are going to see very likely a control of major transportation points in Crimea by either pro-Russian or Russian FSB, special operations people. I think It's going to be very difficult. You have to understand that Vladimir Putin believes Ukraine and Crimea are part of Russia, and he is not going to go quietly into the night.
Finally, Senator, we've seen the former President Yanukovych talking there from Russia today. What pressure should be put on Russia to yield him up to the International Criminal Court or some equivalent?
Well, I hope we have more success than we had with Mr. Snowden. I think you've got to understand that. I think you've got to understand that Mr. Putin looks at United States actions around the world and draws appropriate conclusions. We're now announcing that maybe we'll get completely out of Afghanistan. Iraq is in chaos. We have done nothing literally to help those who are fighting in Syria. And again, the United States the President's statement the other day, a couple of days ago, well, this is not a Cold War chessboard. Well, to Mr. Putin, it is, because of his background, his experience, and his behavior, which he has exhibited in a number of ways. But by no means is it a return to the Cold War.
Senator McCain, thank you very much indeed for talking with us.